Hi, this is Tara Scott. I am the founder of Revitalize Medical Group, and I am going to talk today about MTHFR, hormones, and cancer. So, just a little bit about me. I've been in practice over 20 years. The first 19 years were very heavy with OBGYN. And since 2004, I've been specializing in hormone balances. And I did a functional medicine fellowship and got a board certification in 2012, and then another board certification in integrative medicine in 2016. And you can see that my family here, even though this was a black and white party, this is a great example of the difference of genetics. We call ourselves an Oreo family. So we've got, the two brown kids and myself, and then the two white people in the family. So we're going to hit on genetics today as part of the talk. But first, I want to just talk a little bit about the difference of functional medicine, integrative medicine, and conventional medicine, because you may not be aware of the difference. So here's how I like to explain to you. You have Hagar here. He goes to the doc and says, "What's wrong with me, doc?" And the doctor says, "You eat too much, you drink too much, you're short of breath, you don't get enough sleep, you don't exercise, you have bad knees and a bad back, you need glasses, your hearing is bad, you have a sinus condition, your hair is dirty and oily, and you have dandruff." So what does Hagar say about that? He says, "Is there a pill I can take for that?" So that's just a little glimpse as to what traditional medicine is. You have a complaint, and often you're greeted with a symptom and a prescription for that. So what exactly is a functional medicine then? Well, functional medicine is, functional medicine is treating at the root cause of things. So basically, and if we see something with bloating, nausea, constipation in the leaves here, we're going to search for the cause down in the roots and think, could it be a food allergy? So instead of just treating the symptom that you're having, we like to think about why and what's going on in the body. So today's topics, we're going to talk a little bit about Genetics 101. We're going to talk about MTHFR and a process called methylation. I'm going to describe to you what cancer is, and you're going to learn about how MTHFR affects your hormones and cancer. So by the time you leave today, I hope you're going to feel more and more comfortable about what exactly MTHFR is. And I know a lot of people really fear cancer, so you'll have an understanding after you leave today or after you listen to this about what you can do to minimize your risks of cancer. So first, Genetics 101. So what exactly is DNA? Well, DNA is a double base pair. It looks like a ladder that's wound up like this. And these rungs are made up of these substances, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. So it's amazing that those four substances, any permutation and code, make up the whole genetic code that is responsible for such a complex human being. So I like to think of these as these houses. So just think about each of these places here, or these addresses, as houses on a street, and your street being this strand of DNA. So we talk about a single nucleotide polymorphism, or a SNP. And basically what happens is you have one little base pair, or one house, that is different. Instead of being an A, it turns into something else. So depending on what goes wrong, whether it's just one, if it's one rung of the ladder, you can still climb up. But if it's more than one, it may cause more of a problem with the genetics, and as a result, more of a problem with your bodily functions. So not all SNPs are significant. In this strand of DNA, there's only a small amount here called a coding region that actually gives instructions to the cell to make proteins. So anything there is going to be significant if it's not getting the right instructions. But there may be areas here where you could have genetic differences that don't really mean anything. So let me see if I could explain that a little bit differently here. So we've got person one, and here's the code, kind of like a Morse code. You've got an A here. This person with an A has a normal protein. This person here has a T. So this makes the protein misshapen and doesn't function well. This person here with a C may actually have disease. So it can affect the way something is made. It can affect the enzyme and the action of it, but anything that has to do with your chemistry. So for example, some SNPs change the meaning but not the function. Say you think you're going to see Dr. J. Scott, and you think you're going to go see him for your problems, and in walks this person here, Dr. Joy Scott. Now someone made a mistake, and instead of the O that was supposed to be there, they put the A. So you thought you were going to see a man, but that simple change of one letter to Dr. Joy Scott changes the meaning of the word. But it's still a doctor, she's still a human, and she can still help you, but it does change the meaning. I could take it further and say some SNPs don't mean anything at all. So are you two coming or are you two coming? Again, one change from an O to a W changes the meaning of this word. However, if we're listening, we get the gist and we can still understand and we would still respond to the question. So there's some SNPs in the body that don't make a difference. Now, if we take a look at this and we think about cut and cat, changing a U for an A doesn't make any difference at all. So it would be very confusing and there would be something very wrong with those genes and the messages that they gave. So a little bit about genetic inheritance. You get one copy from your father, one copy from your mother. So you have pairs at 23 chromosomes. So depending on who has the abnormal copy, if you have one abnormal copy, that would be heterozygous. And it usually is not as severe as an issue. And then homozygote would be two abnormal copies. Now, depending on what exactly we're talking about, if we're just talking about eye color, it's not severe or not severe. If we're talking about a disease like sickle cell, when you have sickle trait, then it's heterozygote and you usually don't have the disease, but when you have sickle cell disease, you could have a more severe form of that disease. So with MTHFR, we're talking about basically two addresses or two alleles, 677 and 1298. Think about those as numbers on the houses. And if you're green, you have what's called the wild type, which is what most people have. Now, 50% of the population can have a mutation that's heterozygote. So we see here that, you might have some slowing and some changes in how that enzyme works. And then, of course, if you have the red homozygote, there's going to be more of a consequence. But since this is just one nucleotide of a whole big gene, a whole street, again, it's not as severe as some other genetic things like Down syndrome, which affects a whole chromosome. So there's so many other things that make a difference. So it could be that you have a SNP at MTHFR. So think of MTHFR as a highway like this. See how there's 4 lanes? It is an enzyme that's going to take something and turn it into something. So it's a highway. So other things affect how that enzyme works. For example, the time of day affects traffic. So that's something that has nothing to do with how many lanes are open. It could still be slow. Or if you have construction or an accident, that is definitely going to slow traffic down. So there's something called epigenetics where you may be homozygous or heterozygote, but because of epigenetics things, you can help that enzyme work a little bit better. Or you could even give your body a little detour in your body. So knowing this doesn't mean you're going to get the disease, but it can help you make the proper lifestyle choices and dietary choices that can optimize your health. So what exactly is methylation? Well, it's just a chemical reaction, actually, but it has certain functions in the body. It has to do with genes. It turns them on and off. It has to do with the conversion of food into energy. So a lot of times people who have MTHFR can have fatigue. It also is involved with making your cell walls in your body. Also brain and muscle health, DNA repair, but even more importantly, the balancing of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are hormones in your brain that have to do with whether you're excited or whether you're inhibited. So those can affect your mood, your motivation, your anxiety, and depression. Methylation also affects stress because that's one way those signals that make you stress get out of the body. Methylation is part of detoxification, especially for the hormone estrogen and testosterone. Also, it's important for cardiovascular function and the immune response. So what symptoms suggest that you might have a problem with methylation? Well, a lot of times if I have a patient that has a miscarriage or more than one miscarriage, I think about it. Somebody with migraines, a lot of times I'll think there's a problem. Or any other high estrogen problem like fibroids, endometriosis, heavy periods. And especially if I have someone who took a birth control pill and initially they took it and they felt either crazy or they had lots of bleeding or they felt like they gained a lot of weight, that makes me think they have a problem with methylation. And especially some with breast or endometrial cancer, or for that matter, any type of cancer, we might think is because of the failure to turn genes off. And certainly, as I mentioned before, fatigue. So this is a very busy slide, and don't get stressed about this. But what I wanted to point out about that is MTHFR is only one enzyme of a whole series of very complicated biochemical pathways. So you could have a good MTHFR, but some of these other genes may either not be working properly or may be genetically slow. But MTHFR puts you at risk for heart disease, neural tube defects. But you could have a problem with energy if you had MTRR. So again, one little thing, this is a very, very small part of the whole process. This is a wider view of this. So you have MTHFR here, you have the folate cycle, and that makes folate. And then you have the methylation cycle, which turns animal protein into homocysteine and helps your body's detoxification. So glutathione is something in your body that's like your Hoover vacuum. You've got your BH4 cycle right next to MTHFR, which makes your neurotransmitter. Dopamine helps you with motivation, and serotonin is your feel-goods neurotransmitter. And then this is also your urea cycle, which is important for detoxification as well. So you can see they're all interlinked, and one little piece is important, but it's not the only significant part. So MTHFR has been associated with depression, also spina bifida and neural tube defects. It's been associated with miscarriages and also heart disease. COMT is another enzyme that's involved in methylation as well. And COMT, a problem with that is associated with uterine fibroids, also with breast cancer, with endometrial or uterine cancer, and also anxiety. So, what exactly is cancer? Cancer, we think, is really the failure of the immune system to get rid of the abnormal cells. So basically, cells grow and they die. That is the circle of life. So something happens to make those cells keep growing. And the immune system is supposed to detect this and turn it off. And basically, the cell commits suicide. But for some reason, this doesn't happen in your body. So that's why when I see a patient with cancer, I always take a look at their immune system. Now, a healthy cell will take oxygen and sugar from food and produce energy, but a cancer cell will take that glucose from healthy cells and have the energy to grow and spread. So these are the things that affect cancer. It's your genetics, but it's also your diet. It could be toxins in the environment like pesticides. It could be a virus in the case of cervical cancer. And certainly the environment can affect it. So how do hormones affect cancer? I want you to be able to understand MTHFR, your hormones, and how these things affect cancer. So the hormones that mostly affect cancer are estrogen, cortisol, and insulin. And so we're going to talk about MTHFR and how that affects estrogen. So estrogen, insulin, and cortisol. First, we think about estrogen. Estrogen is made in the body when you're releasing an egg, and it is the hormone that signals growth of the uterine lining, growth of tissues like your hips and your breast. And there are 3 different types of estrogen. Now, we always think of a curvy woman like Sofia Vergara. She's got luscious hair and she's got a curvy figure. This is what we think an estrogen body type looks like. It helps bone health. It helps your heart. We also see people with lots of energy, though. Lots of estrogen, though, have too much estrogen. So where do they get this source of estrogen? It could be from preservatives and chemicals and BPA. Those are things called endocrine disruptors. And basically what that does is it gets into your body and acts like estrogen and turns on the signal to do the things that estrogen does. So we think that estrogen, out of balance from other hormones, can cause cancer. So progesterone is that balancing hormone. So estrogen causes growth, progesterone causes cell death. But progesterone has other important functions in the body, like it is an antidepressant. So it helps calm you down. It also helps you use your fat for energy. It's good for your libido and building bones, also very important for your thyroid, and really good to help promote sleep. And when I see a patient with fibrocystic breast disease, I think they don't have enough progesterone because it protects against that, as well as breast and endometrial cancer, osteoporosis, heart disease, and mental decline. And that is when you have the right amount of progesterone to balance out the estrogen. So balance between these two hormones is very important. When we think of testosterone, I mean, this picture was a little bit overboard, but we always think of muscle mass and stamina. But you know, testosterone is really important for other things like mood and memory and the brain structure. So this is another very complicated stereogenic pathway, and probably more than you want to know about biochemistry. But the point is that there's a two-step reaction to get rid of estrogen. It's floating around in your body, in the blood, and then there's one-step reaction that changes how that estrogen is, so it becomes more water-soluble, the second step, and gets from the blood into the urine. So this enzyme right here, COMT, is the second step of getting rid of estrogen and testosterone out of your body. So why might someone have too much estrogen? Well, you could just make a lot. You could just be somebody that genetically makes a lot of estrogen, and certainly you usually make a lot when you're younger. And then in your 40s and 50s, the signal to make estrogen is very erratic from the brain, so some women seem to make more. It could be that you're getting more in your environment and diet. I know patients just by stopped drinking bottled water and plastics really decrease their estrogen loads. I also see that it could be maybe you don't make a lot, but you can't get rid of it. It's the genetic coding. It's that COMT enzyme and the MTHFR enzyme that actually can make your body very slow to get rid of estrogen. Or there might be a reason you might have high estrogen because you had a hysterectomy and your doctor only prescribed estrogen but not the balancing progesterone. So those are reasons why you might have unbalanced estrogen. So we always like to think about promoting healthy estrogen metabolism. We use things like supplements, vitamins, and phytonutrients. We always make sure insulin resistance is correct because that can slow this whole problem down. Minerals also are very important, as well as your intestine, because your liver clears the estrogen right into your intestine. So if your intestine isn't healthy, then that can affect the way your body gets rid of estrogen as well. And also dietary things can help you get rid of estrogen, like cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, kale, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. So what about cortisol? That is another hormone that definitely affects cancer. So it's produced in the adrenal gland and it has to do with your circadian rhythm. But we do respond to stress. And at the time that we're really stressed, our brain thinks, I got to prepare that body. So it signals the release of cortisol. Now, our brain does not know if we have a deadline, if we're fighting with our husband, or if we are running from a bear. So the same signal goes out to increase cortisol and prepare our body to run. Now, what are the symptoms of too much cortisol? Well, some people are anxious and nervous. Maybe they're foggy and they can't concentrate, or they might start having heart palpitations or water retention. Now, there's going to be sugar abnormalities with cortisol being high because cortisol is trying to get your blood sugar to be up to prepare to run from the bear, and then insulin fights it. So a lot of people, they will feel tired but wired, and they can't sleep, and their mind is racing, and then they start to gain weight, especially in the waist. So what about decreased cortisol? Well, at that point, after running on the hamster wheel for a while, you might feel apathetic or burned out. You might have less stamina, definitely fatigue and sugar problems still, joint and muscle pains, maybe low blood pressure and salt cravings. And a lot of times, even if you are sleeping, you're not rested. So the typical energy patterns for low adrenal function is the morning is the worst time, and people really struggle to get up, and they hit snooze a million times. So what do? We drink a lot of coffee. And by mid-morning, people are generally feeling pretty good. So they're productive at work, and they keep going, and then they eat lunch, and guess what? They have that 3 o'clock rut. And they're double fisting the coffee or reaching for sugar or anything to give them energy. And then somehow we get through the day and feel better in the evening. Now, it could be because we're distracted and we've got a million things to do, like cook dinner and take care of kids, but somehow we get through the day and feel better. But then at night, try to go to bed and you're totally wired, thinking of all the things that you have to do. So in order to see what's going on with your cortisol, it needs to be tested in the saliva. But the good news is the treatment is usually lifestyle, diet, and supplements. And there's things that we do to reduce cortisol's effect. So we do a cortisol test like this that looks at your adrenal hormones. And we also look and think about how it might make you feel. It could make you depressed because cortisol affects serotonin. The third hormone that affects cancer is definitely insulin. So insulin, everybody thinks about diabetics, but insulin is the hormone that will regulate your blood sugar. So you eat, your body releases insulin from your pancreas to decrease your blood sugar. And if you have too much insulin, you're going to either have highs or lows of sugar. And either too high sugar or too low sugar will make your body store fat. And the problem is the standard American diet is so high in carbohydrates that we just are seeing more and more people have a problem with insulin. Now, you might be surprised to hear this, is that this was published a couple years ago in a very prestigious medical journal, that healthy lifestyle can prevent 40% of cancer cases and 50% of the deaths in the United States. And I really don't know why this wasn't on the headlines of the newspaper. Now, they only looked at 136,000 white men and women, but the 4 health habits of moderate intensity exercise, 150 minutes a week, maintaining your BMI under 27.5, which is overweight a little bit, no smoking, and then actually drinking in moderation, which is 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks for men. And the crazy thing about this is these habits were associated with preventing lung, colon, breast, pancreatic, and kidney cancers. And those are some very serious cancers that kill. So I feel very passionate that this really needs to be broadcasted, and this is a message that we need to know, is that we have the power to decrease our risk of cancer by our lifestyle choices. So physical health is so important. One, just for what we just said as far as cardiovascular, but also sweating is detoxifying. Aerobic exercise gets blood flowing that you need for healthy tissue. So very, very important. You need to avoid toxins, hydrogenated vegetable oils, refined sugars. Personally, gluten and casein, casein's a milk protein, can be very toxic to some people. Now, not everybody's the same. Some people have no problem. Any artificial sweeteners and MSG we should really avoid, and hopefully you're avoiding GMOs and pesticides. Now, some people go so far to say, don't use your microwave, don't use nonstick cookware, don't use any plastics, and any food with nitrates. But it's kind of hard to live in a bubble, but you have to pick the big, the things that are doable for you. Now, I'm not sure if you've heard of environmental work groups, Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. This is not the current list. 2018 has a new list they come out with every year, but you can Google this and find out. The Dirty Dozen are the 12 foods that you absolutely must eat organic. The clean 15 are ones that, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to buy organic. And it's really important because it's very expensive to eat everything organic. So for example, avocados, I don't buy organic avocados because it's on the clean 15. Asparagus, you don't have to eat organic. All these things that are on here, but strawberries are always at the top of the list. Spinach is always on here, tomatoes. So those are the things that you've got to get organic. So check it out and you can look. In summary, I hope today you learned a little bit about what MTHFR is and how it can affect your hormones. And I hope you also learned that unbalanced hormones can lead to cancer. And by far, I feel a functional approach is best. Now, I know a lot of people advocate, let's find the cure to cancer. But what I'm saying is, let's find the prevention for cancer. If we just adopted these things and knew more about your body and your biochemistry and your hormones, I feel we could do a much better job, an even better job at preventing cancer and optimizing your health. So for more health tips, if you're interested, follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, and Twitter. We've got lots of information on our website, revitalizemed.com, lots of videos you can ask. We try to keep up with our blog. Just really trying to partner with you to help you get the healthiest that you can and have even better health than you currently do. Because obviously by watching this video, you're already invested in your health and you're trying to be preventative. If you have a health condition that you're wondering if functional medicine can help you, you can always schedule a free discovery call with one of us. We'll talk to you for 15 minutes, try to decide if it's something that is best with a functional approach. So there's the link there. I thank you for your time today. I'm really glad that you guys are interested in your health, and I'm happy that you are joining me today.